up, guys? Operation Despot back at it again for another video. Very excited to be here. We are your hosts, Jonathan and myself, Noah. What kind of things do we have to talk about today, man?
Well, Noah, we got a few things to talk about, but I would like to start out with our Patreon. Guys, bump it right now. Let's get that Patreon. First subscriber that we can get. We got to do something.
We got to do something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. There'll be a special surprise for our first subscriber.
Yeah. First subscriber on Patreon. There's some promises there for you. We don't even know what it is yet, but we'll figure it out.
Right. So second order of business is we're going to get into some local stuff right now.
Uh-oh.
So I was perusing the internets last
tube.
week. Yep.
Okay.
And I came across this article where the police chief or a police chief candidate for Caldwell Police Department, Jason Kuzik, he filed a discrimination lawsuit or claim against the city of Caldwell for a grand total of $272,515.
That's not chump change.
No, that's big news.
And breaking news.
Big news it was. So really the point of this is Mr. Kuzik felt that that he was wronged, I guess, in this whole promotion process to police chief for Caldwell. He was a Henderson, Nevada police chief wanting to make the move, come up to the great state of Idaho, and continue his ability to lead a department and be the Caldwell Police Department police chief.
Yeah.
Well, that was the plan. He was actually Mayor Wagner's first and number one pick in this whole process. I remember this very specifically because I was employed at the time with the city of Caldwell doing cop stuff. And, you want to talk about politics and police work. I mean, when you get the mayor involved and it's time to find a new police chief, we are stretching.
The mayor, the city council,
yeah, it's far and wide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Kuzik was a 25-year law enforcement veteran with Henderson PD. Like I said, he wanted to come up here and was denied the opportunity to be the police chief based on what he is claiming to be age discrimination. Now, he is, I believe he's 52 years old. There was a city council person, Chuck Static, who made some statements of, he's getting near retirement and that the city could again be in search for a new police chief.
Yeah.
Now, there is some alleged thoughts in this that he was those comments had swayed the rest of city council to not pick this gentleman, Mr. Jason Kuzik, and went with the other candidate who is the current police chief, Rex Ingram, with 15 years younger than Kuzik and a significant amount of years less experience. 17 years experience with LAPD. So,
what was Kuzik's experience?
Kuzik was a 25-year law enforcement veteran.
Okay.
That held the rank of captain, I believe, or he was very high up there. So, with that said, I kind of got to thinking about this and wanted it to be an in-depth conversation that we had, about what do you think? Because my thoughts on this are he's got something to stand on.
Yeah.
Granted, Councilman Static's comments weren't, hey, he's just too old.
Yeah.
And you got to weigh up the concern, for the city as a whole and say, are we going to be doing this again in
a couple of years,
4 years?
Yeah. And that's one of those things that you don't just pop a new police chief in there and, it's done and over with. There's a lot of process involved with that. And obviously a lot of prerequisites, for a police chief. So,
Sure.
uh, so I think for me, I'd have to, hearing that again, you'd have to really break down the claim is that what Static said persuaded the other city council members
Mm-hmm.
in their decision. In my opinion, I think a lot of the city council members already had their mind made up. I mean,
Yeah.
with the current police chief.
If my memory serves me correctly, I believe they did.
Yeah. So I don't think that was the case. I don't think Static said some very interesting stuff in that city council meeting. I don't think what that one comment of, he's close to retirement, in my opinion, I just don't think that persuaded other city council members right then and there. That was like, no, we can't go with this then.
Yeah.
But
So if you were in his position, would you feel like you had a pot to piss in, essentially?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. I get what he's saying. So basically he's saying that he's making less money in, where is he at again?
He's in Lewiston.
Yeah, Lewiston.
So he actually got offered a chief of police spot at Lewiston Police here in Idaho.
Yeah.
And he's still currently there being
Right.
the police chief.
Suing the city of Caldwell.
Suing the city of Caldwell.
So, and that was, I guess part of his claim was that he's making less money there. So he wants, I think it was 5 years of what the deficit was of salaries, I guess.
5 years for what Chuck Static said.
So
emotional turmoil.
Yeah, it hurts, man. I'm only 52.
I know, right?
I can't be any worse than Don Lemon saying that women are out of their prime in the 20s or 30s. So,
yeah.
but I don't know, man. Does he have a leg to stand on? Yeah, probably. Is he going to go anywhere? That I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be up to
what are your thoughts?
The great city of Caldwell attorneys to figure out.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a fun one too.
I'm sure they're just going to pay out some money and say, "Here you go."
I mean, I wouldn't blame him for
it. No, yeah. Right. Then again, I feel like people just throw lawsuits just to say, "Give me some money."
Yeah.
That seems to be the world that we live in now.
Oh yeah. I mean, anywhere, civilian life. I mean, that's. It's an easy way to make quick cash.
Oh, totally.
Especially when you have a legal team that doesn't necessarily want to dabble in that kind of publicity.
Well, it's bad publicity, especially for Caldwell.
Yeah, and they don't want that right now. Which
no
department wants bad publicity, obviously, but
there's a part of me though that's like, as city council members and things like that, like you have to watch what you say.
Yeah,
and there's definitely some accountability for the things that you do and say.
Yeah. Well, what was one of the things that he had brought up? I forget the exact quote because I wasn't there, but it had something to do with the effect of our department having some kind of systemic issue.
Yes.
Which is complete BS.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that. I can't remember verbatim what it was, but it was along the same lines of there's a systemic problem within Caldwell Police, and there's just a lot of things that he said that were incorrect.
Yeah,
flat out.
Yeah, Well, and wasn't there a big retraction on that? And and I'm sorry. And
yeah, I think so. Was it public?
No, it wasn't.
No.
But that's unfortunately at that time. That's kind of how it was. Everything was hush hush and in house, and it ultimately was only at a detriment to the officers there, in my opinion.
Oh man, yeah, it definitely sparks some upset people.
Yeah,
rightfully so, me included. I'm like,
yeah,
you're gonna throw us all,
yeah,
into this same wastebasket. Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, and those are public meetings too, and with what was going on with Caldwell at the time, or I guess what people thought was going on with Caldwell at the time, every little thing was scrutinized. You know what I mean? So then when you have a city council member saying that there's systemic issues within the department, I mean that tanks the public's trust immediately. And
Sure.
again, at only a detriment to the officers there. I mean, when I was going out onto the street, people were bringing that up. Well, I mean, your city council members don't even trust you, so how
Right.
am I supposed to trust you?
Yep.
So that's definitely got to be careful what you say on those kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So we do want to nail down mental health stuff today.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about, guys, some stuff that has to do with officer mental health, and how police should be able to work through that with the help of an infinite amount of resources, honestly.
Yeah.
But the kicker is that these same resources are not ones that are talked about frequently,
Yeah.
or ever. I can tell you plenty of times back in my day where it was frowned upon, or you don't talk about it, or you know what, someone would simply just say it's a part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, whatever traumatic thing that you dealt with, like, you just pack that box away, you move on to the next thing, and then continue on. You know.
Well, you can't be a hero, or you can't wear a cape basically and not be perfect
Sure.
in the public's eyes. So
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how treating your mind is more of a constant, and taking care of that mental state of yours should be similar to like working out.
yeah.
You know, when you work out, you are improving your overall fitness and physique. Well, you should be doing the same with your mind.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And not be so wrapped around the axles with, you know, just go to counseling one time.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the big one. That's one that I'd like to get out and just talk about. I know physical fitness is also something that you wanted to touch on a little bit.
Yeah, you know, a little bit, because you know, I saw some things on the old tube that concerned me a little bit. So I will start out with some
What's that?
statistics. So these come from the bluehelp.org. They actually track specifically officers who have taken their lives while being, you know, active. There are some statistics on retired and medically retired officers. So just to shock the hell out of everybody, so we're in what's the 21st of March, right? 33 officers have suicide has taken 33 officers' lives just this year alone. So 193 last year in 2022, 190 in 2021, 190 in 2020, and then skyrocketing in 2019 at 250. And of course that was during, you know, the riots and everything. So and it does break down to different professions. So they say that the average law enforcement, the length at which their career lasted was about 16 years. So it's not even necessarily the newer officers, which I do know even here that we had newer officers locally, not this year, but a few years ago. So you can't sit here and tell me that mental health doesn't play a part in what these officers do every single day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly.
The statistics don't lie here. And I guess the worst part is, like, you'll have some people out there, it's like, well, I mean, they chose to get into this profession. So, well, I mean, I would almost reverse it and say that it's people like them that make that profession so hard, you know?
No kidding.
But I long for the day that we open up this website and it's zero, you know, throughout the entire year. But unfortunately right now, that's just not the case. And I mean, just hit on a few reasons as to why mental health might just catch up to you.
I mean, there's a plethora of reasons.
Yeah.
You know, really, you go see people on their very worst day.
Yeah.
The worst day you can think of, you know, is someone's reality.
Yep.
And so you go to that. You have your shield. you have your sword, your armor, your cape, whatever you want to call it, and you go to these people's houses, you go to their car crashes, you go deliver death notifications, you go to homicide scenes, where the mother is dead with the baby that's dead, or the parents strangled their kid, or shaken baby syndrome, whatever the case may be, right? I mean, those are pretty traumatic things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And as a police officer, you're just expected to deal with it.
Yeah, and just move on to the next call.
Yeah. And dealing with it is something that gets you to be a statistic on here.
Well, and I would argue that a lot of these cases, and this necessarily wasn't the case for me, because I hadn't gotten to that point in my career to where it hit me as hard as it does some people, but nonetheless, it hit me. However, I think a lot of people are afraid that, if they're having some mental health issues, that means their job's done. You know what I mean? Because again, you are, from the beginning, you're expected to be nearly perfect. You know what I mean? When you're going through backgrounds, there can't be big nicks, on your criminal history, or, whatever the case may be.
Just in your personal life.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, they'll come out, talk to your neighbors and stuff like that. If you got into a dispute with your neighbor, even something as simple as that. So I think excuse me, I think a lot of that the stigma comes from, thinking that they'll lose their job, and they don't want to talk about that with anybody.
Yeah. No, you're right. Going back on what you said about, police officers needing to be near perfect.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a pretty fair statement to make, because there's a lot of people that honestly think that way.
Yeah.
That this person that is signing up to go do selfless things has to be a perfect, or nearly like 99% perfect person.
Right.
You know what? We're all human.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody makes mistakes and stuff like that. And, small blemishes are that. They're life experiences. There's life lessons.
And it's part of being human.
Right. It's part of being human. And in my opinion, it helps relate more to people who are in those situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Are on their worst day, And so, speaking on that, there's not enough training for mental health in law enforcement. I'll be the first to tell you that.
Absolutely.
I can tell you a couple times where some stuff that struck me pretty heavy were, I had a baby death that I was a part of, being the patrol officer to respond to it. In one of the subdivisions in Caldwell. And this was like at 2:00 in the afternoon, just a normal call comes in, hey, there's a baby that's unresponsive. And I was close, because the subdivision I'm talking about is the Ashton subdivision right there off of Ustick and Cleveland, right? So I think when I got this call, I was actually at that intersection. And so I was hot on it, made it there within 30 seconds, flipped the red and blues on, hauled ass, got there, pretty much stormed the castle by myself.
Yeah.
Because it was a medical call, and it's pretty common and typical for other EMS, responders, fire and medics to call police.
Yeah.
And so we respond there. I go in, I talk to the guy immediately. He is upset. This guy is mad at the fact that there was a police officer there. And I know, I'm like, first red flag.
Yeah.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
Baby's unresponsive. And baby was only maybe 18 months old, if that. Pretty young, right? Baby boy. And so I remember going in there, and the baby was like on the couch. And I scooped up that baby. As soon as I turned around, EMS and medics were there and just took that kid, did a few small things, and bounced, right? So then comes the rest of the investigation, because it doesn't stop there.
Right.
For EMS, they're doing their thing.
Yep.
For us, it becomes, why doesn't this baby why isn't this baby alive?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was clearly at a point to where he had been dead for a little bit. Like he was very gray, ashy, not healthy, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so getting back to the father, well, who I determined this to be the father based on his reaction to the police presence,
Right.
based on him saying that, yeah, I'm the dad and I was just taking care of my son. And I went in to check on him and he just wasn't breathing. So I'm like, okay, sure, SIDS, something like that, right?
Yeah, 13 months. Though.
Right. Yeah, that's why I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not a paramedic or a detective at that point, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe. And so, he was so upset that he was still like following me around, questioning me. Why are you here? I didn't call you. I called the paramedics. You need to leave. This guy was absolute zero concern with his
child.
kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, another red flag.
Yeah.
Like something is going on.
Yeah.
He tells me, he goes, you need to get out. You need to leave, And I'm like, And at the same time, I'm thinking about this from my own internal perspective of I have a child at home that is roughly the same age as this baby that is passed away.
Deceased.
And my reaction as a father is not what reaction he's giving me right now.
Yeah, it's get in here, please help.
Yes, exactly. I, need to ride with my son to the hospital, whatever the case may be. Yeah. And this guy was so disconnected from it. So it ends up being, I kind of get in this guy's face. You need to sit down. You need to be quiet. We're going to do our investigation because something is going on here. Meanwhile, detectives are coming out because, whenever a baby death or something suspicious like this happens, detectives always come out, regardless of the time of day or anything.
Right.
And so, after getting done on that call, I went to the next call, and it was, I don't know, like a barking dog call or something, just like I'm up here maxed out.
Yeah.
And then now it's, hey,
down at the bottom.
Hey, my neighbor
is
watering my
lawn
fence. Too much. Exactly. It's like, if this person knew what I came from, they would probably shut up about their fence because who gives a shit
about the fence?
Or they're watering your yard.
Well, and people just, I'm a squirrel off here for a second. People just have this inability to just go and talk to their neighbors anymore.
Oh, yeah.
In this current climate. Like, I don't know what it is, but they just absolutely refuse to just go over there and be like, hey, man, my fence is breaking down. You mind turning off the water? It's like, no, please. But anyway.
Yeah. So I go to that call, and then I go to the next call, and the next call. And 4 hours later, I'm done with work. Done with my shift, get undressed at the station, put all my armor and police things away so I can transition to go back home, and then when I get home, hey, honey, how was your day? It was fine,
Yep.
And it was fine. And that's what I said. I left it at that. It was fine.
It was fine. Yep.
Yeah. I think I maybe told my spouse at the time. Yeah. The guy called in because he was complaining about someone watering his fence.
You have to.
Right. And so I never dealt with that at all. Yeah. I didn't go see a counselor. I didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I think the only person that I really talked to was like a guy on my team at the time. And it was like, hey, I went to this. And isn't that crazy how the guy reacted? Like a situation like that. It wasn't like internally,
I'm having some issues.
I'm having some problems. Yeah. And so, then fast forward to a couple years or a few years later. I'm a detective this time. Same thing happens. There's a baby that was left in a car at Dennis Dillon. The guy drops his wife off at work, drives to go purchase a new car, gets out, leaves the baby in the car, and it wasn't his child directly.
Right.
I'll
it was
be clear on that.
Boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah, it was like boyfriend or something. And so he goes, gets the car, buys a car. I mean, this is a hot day in like July.
Yeah.
And the weather is just blistering hot, like the asphalt's hot, that you could bake cookies like on the,
Oh yeah, you can see the heat coming from the asphalt and
yes,
stuff, the
right.
roads. Yeah.
So it was a hot day.
Yeah.
Well, when I get this call, this gets explained to me, and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like, what? And, at this time, like, I'm not a person's crime detective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gang detective.
Right.
And so this isn't really in my wheelhouse, but, as detectives, we're kind of required to, work through the on-call for all types of situations.
Right.
And so this was the situation that my team and I were dealt. So I go to the hospital with this deceased baby again and again, dude. This kid is around the same age of my second child, and I'm like, that's always just in the back of my mind. While I'm sitting here, while my team is out doing evidence stuff, I'm at the hospital, holding on to this child or keeping the chain of custody essentially for this potential homicide that happened,
right.
or
until deemed otherwise.
Right, until deemed otherwise. That's what it is. It's a homicide.
Right.
And so I can remember, dude, sitting in there in the hospital, in the emergency or ICU room. The medical staff did as much as they could, but it was one of those situations where you couldn't do anything. The only thing that you could do is go back in time 4 hours and get that baby out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the time that they estimated that he had been in there was about 4 hours. Yeah. And so again, I go home. How was the on-call? Because it's not, hey, how was work?
Yeah.
Because I got called from home.
Yeah. They know why.
Right.
It was something
yes.
big. Yeah.
And so, hey, how was the on-call? Well, it wasn't so good, and I unleashed a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's, you're not going to tell your spouse, hey, I went here and I saw this and did this and that and, saw a dead baby. And,
Well, and that one made national news. So.
Yes, right. And so, just not unpacking that stuff correctly, it was tough. It was tough for me. Yeah. And then at the same time, you turn to other things to kind of cope with that, like alcohol.
Yeah.
That was mine, was alcohol at the time. It was, something that was like just easy to go to kind of numb the pain a little bit.
The pain and stuff, yeah.
I will tell you that the next day, the hospital actually had a debrief on that, like a mental health debrief. And so I went to that with, I think, the rest of my team. But even then, like I never took that opportunity to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that situation unfold from the hospital standpoint because everybody was very open emotionally and receptive to everyone's emotion.
Right.
There were guys in there that were like, it just sucks. Yeah. There were female RNs that were in tears, hysterical over it, which, I don't blame them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I think I would have been one of those people if I would have used it as that time.
Right.
But I'd never experienced something like that. My team went to just kind of give the police perspective and standpoint on what happened, and not so much the emotional, like, hey, how you doing with it? Yeah.
Well, and I think a big thing too is we take those critical incidences like that, and you put your own life in those shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sympathy. I mean, you immediately think of, especially when you have daughters that close or sons that close in age, you immediately think of, well, this could have been my kid. You know what I mean? And then you think of a million different reasons or ways to figure out, okay, how can I make sure that this never happens? Because I'm sure the mother at that point, wasn't planning on. I know for a fact the mother wasn't planning on that or anything like that.
Right.
But you put yourself in these people's shoes in these horrible situations, because again, as police officers, that's what your job is to respond to, and then you think and you think and you contemplate and you think, how can I make sure this doesn't happen to me or my own family?
Right.
And it's an over and over again thing. Meanwhile, we could have talked about it with a counselor. We could have talked about it with, a psychologist or something, kind of gotten down to, or really, I guess, expressing our feelings in it and, how it really made us feel. And in my opinion, that's where it becomes the hard part, is when we're putting ourselves, I mean, again, these are just the kind of people that police typically are, sympathetic, empathetic people.
Mm-hmm.
And let me highlight people. And they take those horrible situations, and it immediately, the first thing that is said is, man, I mean, this could happen to anybody. This could happen to me. This could happen to my family. So I think it creates a great deal of cynicism, of the public, and trying to really defend, or not defend, I guess, but trying to keep yourself away from any possible situation, you and your family away from any possible situation that could, harm them.
Yeah, that remotely puts them in danger.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, it's definitely not talked about enough in my opinion. And, I hadn't gone to, luckily, any child calls. That was kind of my big thing that I knew could very well be a career ender for me, because we, even in the academy, we watched, a video of a camera had actually captured a dad shaking a very young child, and they show you this in the academy to, I mean, for multiple different reasons, but I couldn't watch it, dude. Like, tears started rolling down my face, because my son at the time was the exact same. And this is just a video, and I never really taught most people in that class, though. They turned away. You could tell the ones who didn't have kids.
Oh yeah.
But kids, for me, man, that's, I remember the call where a father had essentially accidentally hit his young child with a car. And at that time, my kid was the exact same age. I was just heading home. After shift, and I was in my patrol car, and I just hear like click the CAD system, clicks for the updates, and it was click, 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 click. So I wanted to make sure that the team was okay. So, I lifted it up, and, it was a medical call, and it was a 2-year-old child, and it just instantly, I think I had to pull over.
Yeah, like your gut just sinks to the bottom.
I was told not to respond to that one, but and then that's where it has to end right there. You know what I mean? Again, because the perception of police, it has to be perfect, especially in this day and age with the current climate of, the whole defund the police movement, ACAB, all that other BS. You have to be 100% 24/7. And, I think that's all bullshit. No human can ever be 100% perfect. And I think that gets lost a lot of the time. So.
Well, yeah, especially, in going back to the lack of resources.
Yeah.
There's no department shrink that you can go to.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, you can call the Employee Assistance Program, EAP.
Yeah.
But you know what? You don't get a psychologist that understands first responder problems.
Yeah.
You don't get, essentially you're just getting someone out of a Rolodex, and then you call and you set this up. And I know this because I reached out and I used that, and you just get this Rolodex of people that, they ask you like, well, what do you need help with?
Yeah.
Like, work trauma or whatever. And so then it becomes, oh, okay, well, here's,
it's a box to check.
here's this, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to this person, and then it's someone that doesn't understand, and I'm not saying that psychologists don't understand the first responder mindset, but I think there's a fair amount of situations and how cops deal with things that psychologists are not taught.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and first responders are naturally just at higher risk for alcohol abuse, drug abuse, suicide, and things like that. So, yeah, and I agree with you. And I find that crazy because like even after a shooting, an officer involved shooting. I mean, you have to go to you call it a shrink, a counselor to make sure you're fit for duty. I've personally never been through one of those, but I just really am curious. Does it really break down, the mental health stability of that officer, or is it, an officer going in there hoping that he doesn't lose his job because he needs to provide for his family, and this may be the only thing that he's done in his entire career?
It's probably a little bit of that. It's probably a fair amount of, you get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
If you're someone that is very closed off still, I mean, that's not bad to be closed off with a psychologist still, especially after an incident like that. It's like, all right, yeah. How do you feel? Oh, I feel great. Cool.
Yeah.
It's like, there's just not enough. There's not enough resources. In a perfect world for me, there would be a long list of police, first responder counselors that all talk, that all know everybody in the valley and just kind of how things operate and things go.
Yeah.
Kind of like in the movies, I guess. There's some psychologists that ride around and do things like that. But having that ability would be huge. It would feel comforting for me.
Yeah.
The other part of, mental fitness for me would be having someone that you can rely on to reach out to you after a call like that.
Yeah.
And have like a no limit, like emotion. It's just like an open, like essentially like a
completely open.
Yeah,
discussion.
completely open.
Yeah.
Like an open dialogue.
Yeah.
And not accepting the I'm fine for an answer, because that's not, you, me, your wife, everyone knows if you say I'm fine, there's more to it than I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, and nobody can be fine after stuff like that unless you're some serial killer or, psychopath, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Nobody can be okay with. And like I said, you went on those calls, you experienced those calls, and I had just seen it on the call comments, and it tears you up. Like I had to pull over for a second, like, it again, because the first thing you do is, man, this could have been, my child. I need to be more cognizant of this kind of stuff. So no, I completely agree. Or, having a counselor come and talk maybe in a group setting or in a private setting to you. Because I know one of the big things for me in counseling was dedicating that time to go.
Yeah.
And taking that out of the equation, I think so many more officers would get more resources in the mental health department. Because again, no human is perfect, and we all deal with things in different ways.
Yeah.
But and I think that's a great thing too, is knowing these officers, knowing a little bit, at least a little bit about them, to where they can kind of connect, and it's not just sitting in front of this Rolodex, counselor saying,
Right.
"Oh, this is my issue right now. Tell me a little bit about your life." No, I'd like to see somebody that goes in there and it says, "Hey, Jonathan, hey, Noah, you just went on this call. How are you dealing with it? How are your wives dealing with it? How,
Right.
stuff like that." Because, and this doesn't just happen, with critical incidences. It could just happen, over time with, because again, you're going to see people at their worst time over and over and over again. And it gets to a point where it catches up with you eventually, on those smaller calls. The bad domestic violence calls, and if they're including children, the bad accidents.
That's another one. Bad crashes like that, man, they're pretty traumatic.
Yeah. Well, and again, I would say, because you're putting,
Right.
yourself. I mean, that could happen to anybody.
Yeah. Right.
So, but just, so for me with these mental health issues, I guess I wouldn't say that I had issues. It was me not talking to anybody about it, but uh, it it bleeds over into your family life. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt, there's a I forget who exactly it was, but one of the things that he would do to leave work at work and home at home is he would leave his boots at the front doorstep. And wouldn't allow them to go in the front, which you never want to bring your patrol boots inside.
You're walking through all sorts of stuff, not just dog poop.
Yeah, that was his. That was his like. Work is done now. I'm at home.
Yeah.
I wish I got to a point, in my career with that, because it's so hard not to bring that stuff home. Now, are you telling your family about everything that you saw? No, but are you different because of it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
110% you are.
Right.
For me, seeing those calls, hearing those calls, that kind of stuff, you don't want to take your eyes off your children. Never wanted to really, spend time alone with your spouse. You're definitely more vigilant on who watches them, and you come up with more reasons in your head why you are the only one who can do everything that you need.
Yes.
And you become so self-reliant, it tears you up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that definitely bled into my family. I talked about on a previous episode, I think, sleeping on the couch, because if, say, somebody walked through the front door or tried to break in, I want to be the first one there, ready to go, because of how many times we were seeing that over and over again, and especially with the bad drugs and stuff that was going on at the time, or it just it gets to you, dude.
Yeah.
It definitely does. I'll be the first one to admit it. More officers can use, because again, these numbers right here, these 33 first responders that have taken their lives because of these issues, mental health issues, it needs to be zero, and there should be no reason why we don't get to a point where it becomes zero, with the community's help, with the department's help, with other officers' help, and obviously greater mental health resources.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think there's a lot to be said about having an outlet to talk to somebody. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week. Gosh, I sound so old. That's what I do now, man.
Listening to a podcast.
Dude, when I go to the gym and like get on the treadmill, like I will just throw a podcast in and listen to it.
Yeah.
Because
that's so weird to me. I could never work out to a podcast.
It's not working out. It's like just being on the treadmill. And
I need
doing
something.
Oh, do you? Some EDM. So I was listening to this podcast, and it's from a guy that I really do enjoy, is Simon Sinek, and he's like a huge like leadership guy. Probably one of the first or pioneers for giving leadership seminars and just kind of a little bit giving it a different take, you know. And he was talking about how he likes to have somebody that essentially he can sit in the mud with. What does that mean? Having someone, if you're sitting in the mud and you're down and you're sad and whatever else, isn't it a little bit easier to call upon a friend or have a friend follow up with you and just be there with you as a sounding board?
Yeah.
Now, don't be trying to fix the problem, because what are cops? Fixers, right?
Yeah, problem solvers.
Yes, problem solvers. Sometimes it's too much. I think in situations like that, there's a time to be a sounding board and a time to just, I guess, sit in the mud with this person and understand where they're at, what's going on. Yeah. And then after they're ready for criticism, like I say criticism, but it's like when they're ready for the plan, you can be there to help them with that plan.
Yeah. And help them. Now, this may be the problem-solving stuff, but help them create a plan too when they're ready.
Right. And that's the biggest thing is when they're ready.
Yeah.
Because if I'm trying to tell you something and you're like not there mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally,
Like, hey, dude, I'm just trying to talk about it. Like,
right.
I don't need you to tell me what to do.
I encourage you guys to do that too. I mean,
yeah,
with
definitely.
spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends or whoever, you know, give that a try and see is it effective or how effective it is.
Yeah.
You know, ask them too.
Yeah.
Like, is this the time to listen or what?
Yeah, and I'm actually hoping sometime soon I can actually get my wife on to do a little interview because again I had a short career of 2 years, but I did a lot in my 2 years. You know, I wasn't just the one that sat back and took calls for service, uh, and I don't know if that's why it hit me a lot harder quicker. And again, I'm a very closed off person. I'm pretty stoic when it comes to my own feelings. So it catches up pretty quick. But I think it'd be a great idea for her to kind of explain what it looks like from the household point of view.
Yeah.
And basically how she became a single mother within a few months. So,
yeah, exactly.
But just a quick thing. We are gonna be wrapping it up here soon. So I just saw an article recently that NYPD is going to take out their 1.5 mile run from the like the recruiting process. So there's a physical fitness requirement that you have to have, and it typically involves a 1.5 mile run. And one of the spokespersons said, well, I mean, you're not going to get in a 1.5 mile run pursuit. Never say never, for one. Two, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it too, but that 1.5 mile run for me sucked ass.
That is the absolute worst thing anybody could do to their body.
But what did you have to do? You had to keep moving those freaking legs.
Yeah.
And keep fighting
yes.
to keep going, to beat that time, to get past that finish line, or get past that finish line. By taking that away, and that being a very extended, a hard cardio workout, which fighting takes a lot of cardio, it's only at a disservice to those officers. Not only does it teach you, to just keep going. I mean, when you're on the ground fighting and you're breathing heavy, you always revert back to your training. You're gonna have to tell yourself never give up. I just find it's gonna be harder when you don't even have to do something as simple as run 1.5 miles now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Well, you want to hear my thoughts on it?
Tell me.
I think it's necessary to have it to start with, or as a initial qualification. Can this person be physically fit enough to run their ass 1.5 miles and not throw up on the on lap 2?
Yeah.
Which I've seen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've seen guys get to like lap 3/4.
Oh, I've seen people like do 2 laps and then go hide behind a shed because that's it.
Yes, right.
And is that telling the recruitment, oh, well, they can't run, so they can't be a cop? No, it's telling the recruitment they cannot fight through this. They cannot fight through their own mental hurdles.
Yeah.
And just keep moving your legs.
Yes.
That's what it's telling recruitment.
No, it totally is, especially, and then you open up the Pandora's box of, hey, let's take this out. Well, then what's next? We're going to take, so for Idaho, for example, it's push-ups, sit-ups, a jump, the 300-meter run or sprint, and then the 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's it. And so, they do those things, like the 300 comes before the 1.5 miles to smoke you.
Mm-hmm. And you can't feel your legs after that 300.
And then after the 300, I think it's like a 15-minute waiting period, and then you start the 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
To give your body enough recovery to go and do that 1.5 miles. I just ran the 1.5 miles, or did the whole PT test, maybe 2 months ago. 3 months ago. Yeah, probably 3 months ago now, and passed it just fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think it should be a standard to continue those PT tests.
Yes.
Because again, it comes down, well, as much as it comes down to like physical fitness, I mean, it also comes down to we need to make sure that we're fighting through this every single time.
You know what really grinds my gears?
And the news segment on Operation Despot.
No, it's like, so for example, working at Caldwell, we started with the 1.5 miles and did the post PT run for forever.
Yeah.
Well, then it turned into an obstacle course. Did you ever get to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Super fun. You know,
Yeah.
I had a good time with it.
The physical fitness test isn't fun.
No.
For a reason.
Right. Yeah. The obstacle course, very fun.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, scale a 4-foot
wall,
run
drag
up
a
the
dummy.
stair, drag a dummy up the stairs, down the stairs,
Crawl through a little tunnel.
right, go through a window,
Yeah.
like things like that.
That always got me, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're like what, 6'10"?
Yeah. And you got to like shoot your gun.
Right,
and
yeah.
then time.
Yeah, and you got to shoot your gun, right? So I remember when we first did this, it was like, oh, you know, we're just doing this just to do it, you know, just see where everybody's at. And I think the average time was like 5 minutes. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Too long.
Yeah.
There needs to be some challenges there,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so, well, then they started deducting points on the shooting part. And I'm like, okay, sure. But still, it's a 5-minute average time. I'm like, I think when I did it, it was like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I was not the fastest guy. I know that. I'm a big dude. You know, I am not built for like long distance running either.
Oh God.
You know,
Me neither.
and so then it became, there was no standard.
Yeah.
And it was just constant. We'll do it next year.
Yeah.
We'll get to it next year, you know. And then there's guys that would find a way to get out and get a doctor's note so they didn't have to do the obstacle course. I'm like, the reason that we switched from the PT test, the actual 1.5 miles and stuff like that, to the obstacle course was to get two things: get more involvement from all of the employees, and then number two, to take away those waivers so that you could actually see if somebody is physically fit for this job.
These little things that you'll most likely do out on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Climbing through windows. Climbing through windows. Very common.
Going upstairs.
Very common.
Yeah. Dragging people.
Very common. Yeah. You know. And so that just grinds my gears. Is like, we just never got to a point to where it's, hey, here's a standard.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to the, 4th episode now?
Episode 4. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. So we'll do our quick plugs really quick. Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Operation Despop, and we'll put the link in the description, hopefully.
Oh my gosh, dude. How can we forget this?
What?
You need to tell me about that video that's on Instagram.
I thought I could get away from it. Okay, so some of you guys, hopefully most of you guys saw the video that we recently posted on Instagram. If you haven't, go check out our Instagram.
We'll plug the link.
Yeah, we'll put the link in there. So I'll make this quick. So we responded to a call after it had just rained for, I think, 2 days straight or whatever, that 2 juvenile kids were walking on the railroad track, and it was really, really far down there. And I thought, well, if we need to like get them away from the track and stuff, I want to be able to have a vehicle to kind of get them, quickly back to the road and not have to, it's not very big space, right?
Okay.
I'm driving my 4-wheel drive Tahoe, so I have a slight country boy.
Probably with bald tires.
Oh yeah, very, very bald. And I thought to myself, baby, I got 4-wheel drive. Ain't nowhere this beast can't go. So, I start heading down there. It's a little slick, I'm definitely feeling it, but I thought I got through. There's no way I can't get back out. We contacted the kids. They were just messing around. We explained to them the dangers of, standing and messing around on a railroad track.
Did they have pennies? Were they trying to derail the
No,
train?
that's not a thing anymore.
Oh, are you
Yeah.
sure, dude? Did you
Yeah.
see the stuff? What is that? Ohio or wherever
Oh,
where the
yeah.
train derailment was?
Yeah. I don't think that was a penny.
Oh, you think that was the government?
That was a very hot train wheel. Anyway, we start heading back, and instantly I'm like, this is not good. And so we spent, probably 10 minutes trying to get me out. And one of my good buddies recorded it, and the other good buddy helped me out. So we had to dig a little bit of dirt out. And then the worst part is, as usual, I finally get out onto the road. It's all dirty and stuff, but I'm like, I can wash it. No damage to the car, whatever. It was just mud, right? Yeah, heaven forbid. And I get out to the road, and then I see just two guys standing there with their phone.
Yes.
I thought, got him. So, all right, guys.
Good.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Operation Despot episode 4. We will see you guys later.